The evening was quiet, a rare moment of peace after a long day at work. I sat on my balcony, overlooking the Boston skyline, the glow of the city lights reflecting off the Charles River. It had been years since I let myself think about her, 7 years, to be exact. But life had a way of circling back when you least expected it. The shrill ring of my phone broke the silence. I glanced at the screen, my heart skipping a beat. Her name, long buried in the depths of my contact list, flashed across the display. Jenna. For a moment, I just stared at it, frozen. Why now? What could she possibly want after all these years? Against my better judgment, I swiped to answer. Hello? My voice was steady, betraying none of the turmoil bubbling inside. Hank, she said, her voice cracking slightly. It was the same voice I used to know so well, now laced with desperation. I need to talk to you. It's important. The audacity of her words hit me like a punch. Important? The last time we spoke, she was walking out of my life, hand in hand with Tom Foster, the married man she had chosen over me. Her betrayal had shattered me, left me scrambling to piece together a life she so carelessly destroyed. What could you possibly have to say to me, Jenna? I said coldly. 7 years later? Do you think I've been sitting around, waiting for this moment? She let out a shaky breath. I know I don't deserve this call. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I need to see you, Hank. Please. I laughed bitterly. You need to see me? You didn't need me when you were sneaking off to Dallas with Tom. You didn't need me when you tore apart our marriage like it was nothing. Her silence on the other end spoke volumes. But I wasn't done. Do you remember that night, Jenna? When Mike sent me those photos of you two? I watched my entire world collapse in real time. And now, after all this time, you decide you want to talk? I made a mistake, she whispered. Her voice wavered. But there was something else there. Regret? Maybe? Fear? It didn't matter. Nothing she could say would rewrite the past. I lost everything, Hank. Tom left me. He used me, and then he threw me away. I didn't know who else to call. A bitter chuckle escaped me. Oh, so now you've come crawling back because he dropped you? That's what this is about. You're hoping for a pity party? It's not like that, she snapped, her voice rising for the first time. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I hurt you in ways I can never undo. But I need your help, Hank. Please. Just meet me. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking. I leaned back in my chair, gripping the phone tightly. Every fiber of my being screamed to hang up, to let her wallow in the mess she created. But curiosity, that damn curiosity, held me back. What could be so urgent? What could possibly justify this intrusion into the life I'd rebuilt? Fine, I said finally, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. 1 hour. Tomorrow. Noon. Cafe Nero on Tremont Street. And Jenna? Don't waste my time. The line went dead, and I sat there for a long time, staring out at the city. Memories I'd spent years trying to bury resurfaced like ghosts haunting me. The nights we spent walking hand in hand along Boston Common. The mornings we danced in our tiny kitchen, laughing over burnt toast and bad coffee. And the night it all came crashing down. I could still see the images Mike had sent me. Jenna in a sleek red dress I'd never seen before, her hand resting intimately on Tom's arm. The way they looked at each other, the kiss that followed. The betrayal wasn't just in her actions. It was in the way she didn't even try to hide it. That night, I'd cried like a man broken beyond repair. But 7 years was a long time, and I wasn't that man anymore. I was stronger now, wiser. And I'd learned one thing above all else. People like Jenna don't change. Whatever she wanted, it wouldn't be for my benefit. As I stood to go inside, I felt a strange sense of resolve settle over me. Tomorrow, I would face her, not as the heartbroken husband she left behind, but as the man who had risen from the ashes of her betrayal. She would learn that I wasn't someone to be pitted or used. Not anymore. The next day, the streets of Boston were alive with their usual chaos. Tourists crowded around Faneuil Hall, street performers entertained passers-by, and the scent of fresh pastries wafted through the air. I arrived at Cafe Nero a few minutes early, ordering a black coffee and sitting by the window. At 12:03, The bell over the door jingled, and there she was. Jenna. She looked older, worn, her once pristine confidence replaced with something fragile. She scanned the room until her eyes landed on me. For a brief moment, I saw something flicker in her gaze. Recognition, regret, fear? She walked over slowly, clutching her purse like it was the only thing tethering her to the ground. As she sat down across from me, I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Well, Jenna," I said, my voice cold as the January wind outside. "You've got 1 hour. Start talking." Jenna sat across from me, her eyes darting nervously around the cafe. She looked like a shadow of the woman I once knew. Her carefully composed mask, the one she wore so effortlessly back then, was gone. In its place was someone worn down, like life had taken every ounce of pride and ground it into dust. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching her squirm. "You said you needed my help," I began. My tone as icy as the January breeze outside. "So start talking. What could possibly be so urgent that you think I'd care?" She flinched at the venom in my voice, but didn't retreat. "Hank," she said softly, folding her hands together. "Before I say anything, I just want you to know how sorry I am. For everything. I've thought about it every day for the past 7 years." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, you've thought about it? That must have been so hard for you. Meanwhile, I was the one picking up the pieces of the life you tore apart. But sure, Jenna, tell me all about your guilt." Her face crumpled, but I didn't feel the slightest twinge of sympathy. Not after what she'd done. "Tom lied to me," she began, her voice trembling. "He promised me everything. A new life, love, freedom. I believed him, Hank. I thought I was chasing happiness, but all I found was a nightmare." "You believed him?" I leaned forward, my gaze sharp. "No, Jenna. You didn't believe him. You wanted to believe him. You wanted the thrill. Don't act like you were some innocent victim." Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but no words came. I took a long sip of my coffee, letting the silence hang heavy between us. "After I left," she hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. "Tom and I moved to Chicago. At first, it was perfect. He showered me with attention, gifts, promises. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. He was controlling, manipulative. He wanted me to cut ties with everyone I knew. My friends, my family." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm shocked. Truly. The married man you destroyed our life for turned out to be a scumbag? Who could have seen that coming?" Her jaw tightened, but she pressed on. "He was worse than I realized, Hank. He wasn't just controlling. He was dangerous. He had debts, enemies. One night, he came home drunk and," her voice broke, and she quickly wiped at her eyes. "Let's just say it wasn't the life he promised me." I felt a flicker of something, pity, perhaps, but I snuffed it out. "So, what happened? Did you finally wake up and leave him? Or did he kick you to the curb when he got bored?" Her face reddened, and I knew I'd struck a nerve. "He left me," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. 2 years in, he met someone else. Someone younger. He drained my savings and disappeared. I had nothing." "You had nothing," I repeated, my voice dripping with disdain. "Funny, that's exactly what you left me with." Jenna winced but didn't argue. "I deserved it," she said. "I know that now. But I didn't come here to beg for forgiveness or dredge up the past. I came because I have nowhere else to turn." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "You've got some nerve, Jenna. After everything you put me through, you think I'm going to swoop in and save you? Why should I care?" She looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. "Because of Lily." The name hit me like a freight train. "What did you just say?" Jenna met my gaze, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Lily. My daughter." A cold chill ran down my spine. "Your daughter?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "What does that have to do with me?" Her lower lip trembled. "She's 6 years old, Hank." For a moment, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. 6 years. The timeline hit me like a punch to the gut. "You're saying she's mine?" Jenna nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know I was pregnant when I left. I found out weeks later, but by then, I was too ashamed to call you. I told myself I'd ruined your life enough. But now I don't know what to do. I need help, Hank. She needs help. I stared at her, the anger in my chest warring with a wave of emotions I couldn't yet name. Why now? I demanded. Why wait all this time to tell me? Because I was scared, she cried. I didn't think you'd ever want to see me again. And maybe you don't. But Lily, she's innocent in all this. The air felt heavy, the noise of the cafe fading into the background. My mind raced, replaying every moment of the last 7 years, trying to reconcile this new information with the life I'd rebuilt. For the first time since the conversation started, I felt something crack in my armor. If what she was saying was true, if I had a daughter out there, everything was about to change. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let Jenna manipulate me again. If Lily was my daughter, I would fight for her. And Jenna? She was about to learn what real consequences looked like. I took a deep breath and met her gaze. You've got my attention, Jenna, but you'd better start telling me the whole truth. Every last detail. Jenna's confession hung in the air like a thundercloud. I stared at her, my mind racing to make sense of the revelation. A daughter? My daughter? The thought was impossible to process. 7 years of silence, 7 years of healing shattered in an instant. I leaned forward, my voice sharp. If you think I'm just going to take your word for it, think again. You've already proven you're a liar, Jenna. Why should I believe you now? She flinched, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. I don't blame you for not believing me, Hank. I've lied before, but not about this. Not about Lily. Convenient, I said, my tone dripping with sarcasm. What's next? You need money? Somewhere to stay? Or is this just another one of your manipulations? Jenna's expression twisted in pain. I know I deserve that, but it's not what you think. I'm not asking for anything for me. This is about her. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, worn photo. Here, see for yourself. I hesitated before taking the picture. It showed a little girl with curly brown hair and wide blue eyes, eyes that mirrored my own. She had the same dimpled smile I used to see in the mirror as a kid. My stomach twisted, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. This doesn't prove anything, I said, tossing the photo back on the table, though my voice betrayed the crack in my defenses. How do I even know she's mine? I had a paternity test done, Jenna said quickly, digging through her purse again. She pulled out a folded envelope and slid it across the table. I knew you wouldn't believe me without proof. I picked up the envelope, my hands trembling as I unfolded the papers inside. There it was, in black and white, 99.9% probability of paternity. The room seemed to tilt, the noise of the cafe fading into a dull hum. I stared at the document, the words blurring together. She wasn't lying. Lily was mine. You should have told me, I said, my voice low and angry. 7 years, Jenna. 7 years of keeping my daughter from me. Do you have any idea what you've taken from me? Tears streamed down her face. I know, Hank. I know I stole so much from you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. But I thought you'd hate me too much to care. And then, when Tom left, I didn't have the strength to face you. You didn't have the strength? I hissed. You think I'd have turned my back on my own child? Do you know me at all, Jenna? Or were you too busy running off with your married boyfriend to notice who I was? She dropped her head into her hands, her shoulders shaking. You're right. I was selfish, Hank. I thought I was in love with Tom, but I was just running from my own fears. I didn't think I deserved you. And then I made every wrong choice I could. I leaned back, staring at her with cold eyes. What changed, Jenna? Why now? She lifted her head, and for the first time, I saw true fear in her eyes. Because Lily's sick, she whispered. She has a congenital heart defect. She needs surgery, and the insurance isn't enough to cover it. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. What? She's been in and out of the hospital for the past year, Jenna explained, her voice cracking. The doctors say the surgery will save her life, but I can't do it alone. I've tried everything, Hank. I'm out of options. I stared at her, my mind reeling. The anger that had fueled me moments ago was now warring with something else. Fear, desperation, love for a little girl I hadn't even met yet. Why didn't you come to me sooner? I demanded. Why wait until it was life or death? I was scared, she cried. Scared you'd slam the door in my face. Scared you'd hate me too much to even listen. But when the doctors told me how serious it was, I couldn't keep running. Lily deserves better than that. I clenched my fists, my heart pounding in my chest. Where is she now? With my mom, Jenna said. She's been helping me take care of her while I work. I didn't bring her because I didn't know if you'd even agree to see me. I sat back, running a hand through my hair. This was too much. Too fast. One moment, I thought I'd buried the past, and now it was clawing its way back, threatening to drag me under. I need to meet her, I said finally. If she's really my daughter, I need to see her. Jenna nodded quickly, wiping her tears. Of course. Whenever you're ready. Don't mistake this for forgiveness, I warned. You robbed me of 7 years with her, and I'll never forget that. But if Lily needs me, I'll be there. Not for you, for her. Jenna's lips trembled, and she whispered, Thank you, Hank. I ignored her gratitude, already planning my next steps. This wasn't just about helping Lily. This was about making sure Jenna understood what it meant to mess with the wrong man. If she thought I'd let her walk away unscathed, she was in for a rude awakening. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The drive to Jenna's mother's house felt like a lifetime. My mind raced with questions I didn't have answers to. What was Lily like? Would she know who I was? Could I ever make up for 7 years of missed birthdays, scraped knees, and bedtime stories? The anger I felt toward Jenna simmered beneath the surface, but for now, it was overshadowed by a mix of apprehension and something unexpected. Hope. Jenna sat silently in the passenger seat, wringing her hands. Every now and then, she glanced at me as if trying to gauge my mood, but I refused to meet her eyes. My focus was on the road and the tidal wave of emotions threatening to crash over me. The house was a modest, 2-story colonial in Dorchester, the kind you'd walk past without a second glance. It had a weathered charm, with white paint peeling from the shutters and a small swing set in the front yard. As we pulled into the driveway, my chest tightened. That swing set. Had Lily played there? How many memories had been made here without me? Jenna hesitated before stepping out of the car. She's in the living room, she said softly. My mom's watching TV with her. I nodded curtly, stepping out and slamming the car door harder than I intended. Jenna flinched but said nothing, leading the way to the front door. My heart pounded in my chest as she opened it, the faint sound of cartoons filtering out into the chilly Boston air. We stepped inside, and I immediately felt the warmth of the home, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. Jenna's mother, a petite woman with graying hair, looked up from the couch. Her expression shifted from surprise to something resembling guilt as her eyes met mine. Mom, Jenna said awkwardly, this is Hank. Jenna's mother stood, wringing her hands nervously. Hank, she said, her voice soft. It's been a long time. I nodded stiffly. It has. Before the conversation could go any further, a small voice interrupted. Mommy, who's that? I turned toward the sound, and there she was. Lily. She was smaller than I'd imagined, with those same curly brown locks from the photograph and eyes that seemed too big for her delicate face. She clutched a stuffed rabbit in one arm, her head tilted in curiosity. My throat tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. Jenna knelt down beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Lily, she said gently, this is Hank. He's your daddy. Lily's brow furrowed, her little mouth forming an O as she studied me. My daddy, she asked, her voice filled with a mix of wonder and confusion. I took a shaky step forward, crouching down to her level. Hi, Lily, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm your dad. For a moment, she just stared at me, clutching her stuffed rabbit tighter. Then, to my surprise, she smiled. A small, shy smile that lit up her whole face. You look like me, she said matter-of-factly. I let out a shaky laugh, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. I guess I do. She took a hesitant step closer, her little hand reaching out to touch mine. Her fingers were warm, delicate, and they fit so perfectly in mine it nearly broke me. Do you like bunnies? She asked, holding up her stuffed rabbit. I love bunnies, I said, my voice thick with emotion. What's his name? Mr. Flopsy, she said proudly. He's my best friend. Well, I said, forcing a smile. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Flopsy. Lily giggled, and the sound was like music. For a moment, it was just the two of us, and the world outside seemed to disappear. I had missed so much, but maybe, just maybe, I could be the father she deserved. Lily, sweetheart, Jenna said softly, interrupting the moment. Why don't you go get your coloring books? You can show Daddy your pictures. Okay, Lily said brightly, skipping off toward the stairs. As soon as she was out of earshot, I stood and turned to Jenna, my expression hardening. You had no right to keep her from me. I know, Jenna whispered, tears streaming down her face. I was selfish. I was scared. But I'm trying to make it right. Making it right? I scoffed. You think bringing me here after 7 years erases what you did? It doesn't. Jenna's mother cleared her throat awkwardly. I'll go check on Lily, she said, quickly retreating up the stairs. Jenna turned back to me, her voice pleading. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Hank, but Lily does. She needs her father. And I can't do this without you. I clenched my fists, trying to rein in the rage bubbling beneath the surface. This isn't about you, Jenna. It's about her. And if she needs me, I'll be there. But don't think for a second that I'm doing this for you. She nodded, swallowing hard. That's all I can ask. Just then, Lily came bounding back down the stairs, clutching a stack of coloring books. Look, Daddy, she said excitedly. I drew a picture of a bunny family. I knelt down again, my heart breaking and mending all at once as she showed me her colorful drawings. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain, I wouldn't let her down. Lily was my daughter, and I would fight for her, no matter what it took. Jenna's mistakes had cost me 7 years, but I wouldn't let her rob me of any more. It was time to reclaim what was mine. For the next week, I found myself driving to Dorchester almost every day. My evenings became filled with coloring sessions, tea parties with Mr. Flopsy, and stories about princesses and brave knights. Lily was more incredible than I could have ever imagined. Smart, funny, and endlessly curious. She asked questions about everything, from the stars in the sky to why ice cream wasn't a breakfast food. Despite my growing bond with her, the tension between Jenna and me lingered. Every time I looked at her, a fresh wave of anger threatened to rise. I tolerated her presence only for Lily's sake, but it didn't make the sting of betrayal any less sharp. One evening, after Lily had fallen asleep on the couch beside me, Jenna approached with 2 mugs of tea. She hesitated before sitting down, her eyes darting nervously to mine. Can we talk? She asked. I sighed, carefully lifting Lily and carrying her to the small bedroom upstairs where she slept. Once she was tucked in, I returned to the living room and sat across from Jenna. What is it now? I asked, my tone sharper than intended. She took a deep breath. I need to tell you something. The full story. I leaned back, crossing my arms. About time. Start talking. Jenna stared into her mug as if searching for the right words. When Tom left me, she began. I thought it was the worst thing that could happen. But a few months later, I found out it wasn't just me he was using. I raised an eyebrow, my curiosity piqued despite myself. What are you talking about? He was running a scam, she admitted. A Ponzi scheme. He conned millions out of investors, including me. By the time I realized what was happening, he was gone, and so was all my money. I sat up straighter. You're saying the guy you left me for wasn't just a cheating dirtbag? He was a criminal? She nodded miserably. I was so blind, Hank. I thought he loved me, but I was just another pawn in his game. I shook my head in disbelief. I don't know if I should feel sorry for you or laugh. There's more, she said quickly, her voice trembling. The authorities caught him a few years ago, but not before he used my name on some of the documents. They think I was involved. What? I hissed, my voice rising. Are you telling me you're under investigation? Jenna nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. They've frozen my accounts, Hank. I've been trying to prove I didn't know what he was doing, but it's hard. And now with Lily's medical bills, I stood abruptly, pacing the room. Unbelievable. You dragged me into this mess after 7 years, and now I find out you're being investigated for fraud? Do you ever stop making mistakes, Jenna? She flinched but didn't argue. I know I've made a mess of everything, but I swear, Hank, I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't know who else to turn to. The room felt suffocating, the weight of her words pressing down on me. For a moment, I considered walking out and never looking back. But then I thought of Lily, her bright smile and infectious laughter. She didn't ask for any of this, and she deserved better. This changes things, I said finally, my voice cold. I'm not going to let you drag Lily down with you. If the authorities are closing in, I'm going to fight for custody. Jenna's eyes widened in panic. No, Hank, please, don't do that. I may have made mistakes, but I'm a good mother. Lily needs me. She needs stability. I snapped. She needs a parent who doesn't bring chaos and criminal investigations into her life. You think I'll let you keep her when you can't even keep your own life together? Jenna broke down, sobbing into her hands. I'll fix this, she whispered. I'll prove I didn't do anything wrong. Just give me time. Time? I thought bitterly. Time was the one thing she had stolen from me, and now she had the audacity to ask for more? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the table. It was an unfamiliar number, but I answered, needing a distraction from the chaos in front of me. Mr. Langley? A firm voice asked. This is Hank, I replied cautiously. This is Agent Morales with the FBI. We're calling regarding Jenna Miller. We believe you're connected to her through your daughter. We need you to come in for questioning. The floor seemed to fall out from beneath me. Questioning? About what? We'll explain everything when you arrive, Agent Morales said. Please understand this is a matter of urgency. I hung up, my hands shaking. Jenna looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. Who was that? She asked. The FBI, I said grimly. They want to question me. About you. Jenna's face went pale. Hank, I didn't do anything. You have to believe me. I don't have to believe anything, I snapped. What I have to do is protect Lily from whatever mess you've gotten yourself into. And trust me, Jenna, I'll do whatever it takes. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. The trust she had broken all those years ago was shattered beyond repair, and this latest twist only confirmed what I already knew. I couldn't let her drag me, or Lily, down any further. I left the house that night, the weight of the FBI's call pressing heavily on my shoulders. My life had just taken a turn I never saw coming, and for the first time, I wasn't sure who the real enemy was. But one thing was certain, I was ready for a fight. The FBI's questioning was like stepping into another world, one where every detail of your life was dissected under a microscope. I arrived at the Boston field office the next morning, feeling the weight of Jenna's chaos pressing down on me. The waiting room was sterile and cold, filled with muted colors and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. I sat stiffly, trying to mask the storm brewing inside. Agent Morales, the man who had called me, was a sharp-eyed, no-nonsense type who wasted no time getting to the point. Mr. Langley, he began as he sat across from me in a small, windowless room. Your connection to Jenna Miller places you in the orbit of a rather significant investigation. We need to establish what you know and how involved you may have been. Involved? I repeated, incredulous. I didn't even know where Jenna was until last week. I've had nothing to do with her for 7 years. Morales studied me, his pen tapping lightly against a file folder. Be that as it may, Ms. Miller's name is tied to multiple fraudulent transactions connected to Tom Foster's Ponzi scheme. You're listed as a previous financial beneficiary during the time they were together. What? I snapped, sitting forward. That's impossible. I haven't received a dime from Jenna, or Tom, for anything. He slid a document across the table. Recognize this? I scanned the paper, my heart sinking as I saw my name attached to a joint account. An account I didn't even know existed. This isn't mine, I said firmly. I never opened this account. Records show significant deposits and withdrawals during the time of Foster's operations, Morales said, his voice calm but unrelenting. If you didn't open it, who did? The answer was obvious. Jenna must have done this. Or Tom. They used my name. Morales nodded, jotting down notes. We suspected as much. But unfortunately, your name's involvement means you'll be scrutinized closely. I clenched my fists, barely containing my anger. What do I need to do to clear this up? For now, Morales said, cooperate fully. If Jenna is guilty of any involvement, it'll come out in the investigation. But I suggest you prepare yourself. This won't be a quick process. I left the FBI office feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. Jenna's recklessness wasn't just ruining her life. It was pulling me down with her. As I drove back to Dorchester, a plan began to form in my mind. If I wanted to protect Lily, I needed to cut Jenna out of the picture entirely. When I arrived at her mother's house, Jenna was pacing the living room, wringing her hands. Her mother sat silently in the corner, watching with a look of quiet disapproval. Lily was nowhere to be seen, likely playing in the backyard. What did they say? Jenna asked the moment I walked in. They think I'm tied to Tom's scam because of you. I snapped, my voice low but furious. You used my name on a bank account. Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you've dragged me into? I didn't mean to, Jenna said, tears welling up in her eyes. Tom said it was just for convenience, that it didn't mean anything. I didn't know he was using it for fraud. That's your excuse? I demanded, stepping closer. You didn't know? Jenna, your ignorance doesn't erase the damage you've caused. Her mother finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. She made mistakes, Hank, but she's trying to fix them. I turned to her, my anger barely restrained. Trying? She's 7 years too late. And now the FBI is breathing down my neck because she can't own up to her choices. Jenna sank into the couch, her head in her hands. I'm so sorry, Hank. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. The only thing you can do to make this right is stay out of my way. I'm filing for custody of Lily. Jenna's head shot up, her face pale. What? No, you can't. I can, and I will, I said, cutting her off. Lily deserves stability. She deserves a life free of your messes and the fallout from your choices. If the FBI comes after you, what happens to her? I won't let her suffer because of you. You don't understand, she pleaded. Lily needs her mother. She needs a parent who can take care of her, not one who's being investigated for fraud, I retorted. You've lost your right to call yourself her mother the moment you put her in this position. Jenna's sobs filled the room, but I refused to let them sway me. My focus was on Lily and what was best for her. Jenna's guilt couldn't undo the damage she had done, and her tears wouldn't save her from the consequences of her actions. Over the next few days, I met with a lawyer who specialized in family law. She assured me that the evidence of Jenna's connection to Tom Foster, coupled with the FBI investigation, would work in my favor. It wouldn't be an easy fight, but I was ready for it. I also began documenting everything, text from Jenna, bank records, even my interactions with the FBI. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. Lily's future was at stake, and I wouldn't let Jenna's mistakes ruin it. As I tucked Lily into bed one evening, she looked up at me with those wide, innocent eyes. Daddy, she whispered, are you going to stay forever? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I leaned down, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Yes, sweetheart, I said softly. I'll always be here for you. In that moment, I knew there was no turning back. I would fight with everything I had to protect her. And if Jenna thought she could stop me, she was about to learn just how far I was willing to go. The courtroom was cold, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. It was sterile, clinical, with walls painted in neutral tones that seemed to suck the color out of everything. I sat at the petitioner's table, my lawyer by my side. Jenna sat across from me, her face pale and drawn, her hands trembling as she clutched a tissue. Lily wasn't here, of course. She was at a friend's house, blissfully unaware of the battle being waged over her future. The judge, a stern woman in her late 50s, looked over her glasses as the proceedings began. My lawyer presented our case methodically, Jenna's ties to Tom Foster, her negligence in allowing my name to be entangled in fraudulent activities, and the ongoing FBI investigation that cast doubt on her ability to provide a stable environment for Lily. Jenna's lawyer countered with pleas for understanding, highlighting her efforts to turn her life around and her deep love for Lily. They painted her as a struggling mother trying to do her best in the face of insurmountable challenges. It was a compelling argument, and for a moment, I worried the judge might be swayed. But then came the bombshell. "Your Honor," my lawyer said, sliding a folder across the table, "these are audio recordings and financial documents that further implicate Ms. Miller in Mr. Foster's scheme. They show her direct involvement in opening fraudulent accounts and managing funds." Jenna's head snapped up, her face going ghostly white. "That's not true," she blurted out, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know." The judge raised a hand to silence her. "Ms. Miller, you will have a chance to respond after I review the evidence." I glanced at Jenna, her panic palpable. She knew the weight of the evidence. This wasn't just about custody anymore. This was about her future. After a tense silence, the judge finally spoke. "Mr. Langley, you've demonstrated a strong case for stability and a secure environment for your daughter. The evidence presented here leaves me little choice. I am granting full custody to Mr. Langley." Relief washed over me, but it was bittersweet. I glanced at Jenna, who looked utterly broken. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Back at my apartment, Lily was playing with her stuffed bunny, oblivious to the storm that had just passed. I watched her from the doorway, a sense of peace settling over me for the first time in years. She was safe now, and that was all that mattered. Later that night, as I was tucking her into bed, she looked up at me with wide eyes. "Daddy, will Mommy come visit me?" I hesitated, searching for the right words. "Mommy loves you very much," I said gently. "But for now, it's just going to be you and me." "Okay." She nodded slowly, her little hand reaching for mine. "That's okay. As long as I have you." My heart clenched, and I leaned down to kiss her forehead. "You'll always have me, sweetheart. Always." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Jenna's legal troubles deepened as the FBI uncovered more evidence against her. She faced charges of aiding and abetting fraud, and though I wasn't thrilled about the chaos it would bring, I couldn't deny she was reaping what she had sown. I focused on Lily, pouring every ounce of energy into giving her the stability she deserved. We settled into a routine. Mornings spent making pancakes, afternoons at the park, and evenings reading stories before bed. She was my world now, and I was determined to be the father she needed. One afternoon, while we were walking along the Charles River, Lily stopped and tugged on my hand. "Daddy, do you think bunnies are brave?" I crouched down, smiling at her curious expression. "I think the bravest bunnies are the ones who take care of their families." "Why do you ask?" She held up Mr. Flopsy, his worn fur catching the sunlight. "Because I think you're brave. You're like a bunny who always keeps me safe." The lump in my throat was instant, and I pulled her into a hug. "Thank you, Lily," I whispered. "That's the best thing anyone's ever said to me." Months turned into a year, and life slowly began to feel normal again. Jenna was convicted on several charges, receiving a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation with the FBI. She wrote letters to Lily from prison, but I kept them tucked away for now. One day, I'd let her read them, but not yet. Not until she was ready. As for me, I found peace in the life I'd built with Lily. Every laugh, every hug, every bedtime story was a reminder of why I'd fought so hard. Jenna's betrayal had taken so much from me, but it had also given me something I never expected, a second chance to be the father Lily deserved. One evening, as I stood on the balcony of our new home overlooking the Boston skyline, I felt a strange sense of closure. The city lights twinkled like stars, and for the first time in years, the weight on my shoulders was gone. Lily ran out to join me, wrapping her tiny arms around my waist. "Daddy, look at all the lights. They're so pretty." "They are," I said, picking her up so she could see better. "Just like you." As we stood there together, I realized something profound. The past no longer defined me. Jenna's mistakes, her betrayal, they were just chapters in a story that had led me to this moment. And for the first time, I was free. The fight was over, and I had won.